Hello bass family, and welcome to Everything Bass with Dale Titus. Today we're doing the second installment in Understanding Intervals series. And today we're doing the major third and minor third. And this is an important lesson for you really to get a grip on harmony theory from its very genesis, the very beginning. If you haven't watched Understanding Intervals Volume 1 or series, Unit 1, that's where I discuss the octave and the fifth. You may want to pause this video, go back, check out Understanding Intervals Unit 1, and then come here just so we can build them together in a fashion that I think makes a lot of sense. So let's get on to it. Today we're going to do major third and minor third, as I said. So let's talk about the major third. And the most common fingering for a bass player that you'll find for the major third is you play the tonic or the root with your middle finger, and then with your index finger you go up a string but back a fret. You go down in pitch a fret. So it makes that short little diagonal on your fingerboard. That's a major third interval. If you jump up higher on your bass, it actually sounds very cool to play. And that's important, I think. If you don't feel comfortable playing the intervals together like that on your bass, if you have a piano in the house or a keyboard, or you can ask a friend to play them for you. It's nice to hear them played together. But I think most basses, most modern basses, if you're tuned up and intonated well, will sound good. Where it can get a little muddy is if you try to play them in unison low on your bass. That can get a little muddy because we got big long waveforms and they start clashing. When you get up here, the waveforms move faster and you can hear more definition, so it sounds better. So a major third. Now that's one way to remember it, is this short little diagonal, which, going up one string, back one fret. That's one way. The other way is look at where it is in the major scale. You count up 3 notes in the major scale. 1, 2, 3, and that's your major third interval. There are other places to play it. One of the most other places that I see a lot in bassline transcriptions and things is to play the tonic and then go up, and this is a bit of reach because you got to go up 1, 2, 3, 4 frets. That's kind of tough. But why it works sometimes is like if you're going to slide in. That's a better use of that major third interval, is that way as opposed to this way. So practice your major thirds off of every root you can think of. And backing it up, if you were to combine the major thirds with the perfect fifths and the octaves from Unit 1, you actually have the major triad. Root, major third, perfect fifth, and the perfect octave, or the octave. I'm just going to quickly go by that because I am doing a whole nother video series on triads and on seventh chords. But it is kind of neat to see how these intervals, when you start combining them, make beautiful chords and some cool tension chords and things like that. So major, you'll notice that when I played the chord together, the dyad, the 2 notes, it's kind of positive sounding and happy sounding and restful. The minor third is a darker sound. Now, the most common way to play the minor third is to play the tonic on any string and go up 1, 2, 3 frets. Now in this case I'm playing a C and I'm going up to an E flat. And that's a minor third interval there. But you can also play it on 2 strings by playing the tonic with I suggest either the ring or the pinky, and then go up 1 string and you go down 2 frets. And that's another place you can play the minor third interval. Now this is a good time to talk about a truism, which is something that is always truthful in music and something you can really anchor onto and might help you understand more theory in the future. Anytime you have any major interval, major third, major 6, major 7, major 2, and you want to make it minor, you just have to drop it 1 fret lower in pitch. So let me demonstrate that. This, as we said before, is a C major triad. Now if I want to make that minor, I just move that note down 1, and now that's a C minor. Now don't let the visual be weird, but it's the same as me going, here's a major third, and I move it down a half step to the minor third, because these 2 are the same notes. They're inharmonic, they're the same. So we have a good concept that will help us build our theory later when we're talking about different scales and modes and harmonies and things like that, is that when you want to make a major interval minor, you move it lower in pitch by 1 fret. When you have a minor interval and you want to make it major, you move it up 1 fret and you make a minor interval major. And that's not just to the thirds. So any major interval you can make minor by moving it down, and any minor interval you can make major by moving it up. That's such a cool thing to be able to memorize, because some you can bank on. That doesn't change. There's a lot of things with music that's subjective, and there's some things where people are like, well, I prefer this, I prefer this. So I always try to point out something that you can really bank on, and that movement of major to minor is a truism. That's accepted worldwide, and you can really take it to the bank and practice it. So what I would do every day that you get up, and it takes very little time. I mean, a minute is a long time to do this, but start saying, like, sit down and go, okay, G. I'm going to take my G notes, and I'm going to play the G and the major third, G and the minor third, and practice both minors. You can practice both majors too, it's fine. And then find another G, G and a major third, G and a minor third. Then take another G, G and a major third, G and a minor third, things like that. And then that's enough for that day. And then next day, take and do a D sharp, and just do those all over. The good collateral benefit to that is you're going to learn your fingerboard better. But really what it is, you're going to train your ear to recognize major third and minor third intervals. You're going to be able to relate to them better when I show you like scales that include those two intervals. And that's really kind of cool. Now, I should add here, one thing I really liked when I was studying theory is if someone shows you a scale, and maybe they just learned it off the internet and they don't know like what chords it goes to or whatnot, knowing what kind of third it has is a good start. So if someone shows you this crazy scale and it has a major third in it, then you know, okay, great, it's going to be in the major family, which could include augmented scales or augmented chords and things like that. And then if it has a minor third, it'll go into the minor or possibly the diminished family. And I know I just probably threw a lot at you and you're like, okay, you lost me. That was just a little extra, and I will cover it in future lessons, I promise you that. But right now, just realize that it's important that you know how to identify and play a major third interval and a minor third interval. All right? Today, in our encore item, we're going to talk about the lovable guitar stand. And I know it's not a CD, and I'm not promoting a new effects pedal or a new amp or anything, but it's so important. And it kind of came up because of a sad thing, actually, is hearing my friend tell a story about, he's a guitar player, about he would lean his Gibson Les Paul up against his amp with no stand, and one day it just fell over and broke the headstock right off. So I encourage you guys, take care of your instruments and they'll take care of you. And one of the simplest things to do is buy a guitar stand. And there's so many different kinds. This is one kind out there, but I also own some that are more built like a small A-frame that work for some instruments, and some really cool ones that I use on the road. So just go to your local guitar shop and ask them, tell them what instrument you have, because like this bass has a very unique body style and it's got a very long neck and stuff, and it doesn't fit well in certain guitar stands. Now, besides protecting your investment from falling over and breaking, the other thing is that I wanted to talk briefly about today is making a practice environment that is motivational and not demotivational. There's been times, because of roommates that I've had in small apartments that I lived in, that I couldn't leave my stuff set up. And honestly, if you're just not like feeling like, I don't know if I want to practice today, and you have to set up everything and pull your guitar out and pull up your amp and plug in and stuff, sometimes that can be demotivating, and sometimes that can be just the excuse you need not to practice. If you have a private space, a bedroom, a den, someplace where it won't bother anyone to set up your stuff, then I would get a music stand, a guitar stand, set all your stuff up, and have it ready to go so that when you want to practice, all you have to do is pick up your bass. Now, the little warning is, remember, if your bass has active electronics, don't leave it plugged in, because just the fact of the plug being in, you're going to be slowly draining the battery, and your battery won't last as long. Likewise, on your pedal board, if you're not using a power supply, you're still using 9-volt batteries, you'll want to unplug all your pedals just so they won't drain the batteries and you'll be in the poorhouse. So we'll talk a lot in the future about pedals, because I love pedals. I absolutely adore them, and I have pedal boards all over. And we'll talk about active electronics versus passive electronics in future videos. But today's video was the major third and the minor third with the encore item, our good friend, the guitar stand. Please share any questions or comments you have below. And I would also encourage you, a little PS to this video I forgot to talk about, is if you have seen Unit 1 with the octave and the fifth, and now you know Unit 2, the major third and the minor third, you should practice them together. A lot of this information can atrophy, which means if you learn the first unit and we get on to Unit 6, but you haven't reviewed the Unit 1, it can get a little bit stale and you might confuse things. So it's always good to be reviewing. In fact, the great bass instructor, the great music instructor, Vincent Breedice, is famous for saying review is a musician's best friend, and I completely agree. So how does that apply to these two units, Unit 1, Unit 2, understanding intervals? Is that you can actually pick a root and play all of them and say them out loud, and I'll talk about that in a second. But if you're playing root off of the C, then play the root, the octave, as we learned, the root, the perfect fifth, the root, the major third, the root, and the minor third. And then try maybe a C higher on the instrument or change. Like I said, changing the root every day is helpful, so you don't just relate that particular concept to that particular root. You need to be able to apply all this information to any possible root that you could be called to play on. So yeah, just review. And when we go to Unit 3 and talk about those two new intervals, you want to fold them in and practice. And I promise you, it doesn't get overwhelming as long as you master each one before going on to the next one. Mastering just means that if someone was to yell out, play an octave off of a G sharp, you'll be able to do it. And if someone says, play a major third off of F sharp, you'd be able to do that. That's really what it means. So thank you so much for stopping by. I kind of rambled on here, but hopefully now you understand what's the difference between a major third and a minor third. I really appreciate the support. Click like, hit subscribe, smash the bell icon, and I will see you in the next video.